our next story, the Islamic Republic is taking its sweet time naming a new successor to the late supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. And a new report says that the reason appears to be security fears. Surprise, surprise. According to officials speaking to the New York Times, the regime is worried that whoever takes the job next could become a target for the United States or Israel after Israel literally said it will take out whoever replaces Khamenei. The frontrunner, who is widely believed to be next in line, is Khamenei's son. That's Mojtaba Khamenei. But officials say that even discussing his name publicly has raised alarm inside the regime. The delay leaves Iran's leadership structure uncertain at a time when the country is already under intense military pressure and facing one of the most volatile periods in its modern history. And joining us now is Iranian-American analyst Navid Mohibi. Navid, Mojtaba Khamenei has long been rumored as a possible successor to his father. Tell us a little bit about who he is and what this would mean for Iran.
Thank you for having me on. Actually, the first time that Iranian public got to know Mojtaba Khamenei, the second son of Ali Khamenei, was during 2009 and the presidential election. One of the candidates, Mehdi Karoubi, sent a letter to Khamenei complaining that his son actually cheated on the election and allowed Ahmadinejad to win the so-called presidential elections. Since then, Iranians in the street, especially after that election, Iranian protesters during the Green Movement chanted, Mojtaba, we hope you die and you will never become the next leader. And since then, I think Iranian public has been accustomed to hearing more about his role, his behind-the-scenes role. And it appears that many IRGC leaders are also leaning towards Mojtaba. He has been very influential, and many Iranians believe that he has been behind many of a crackdown against Iranian protesters and domestic repression. Right. And many analysts also believe he's even more hardline than his father.
You know, Trump says that he wants to essentially pick the next leader of Iran, or at least be heavily involved in that process. How are Iranians taking this, especially after comments that he made on Tuesday, essentially saying that he wasn't convinced that the Shah's son, Reza Pahlavi, is the man, you know, given, of course, the fact that Pahlavi has been widely supported, especially by the Iranian diaspora?
You know, President Trump has been making a lot of comments about the future of Iran. Every day he's changing his views. But I think that at the end of the day, Israel will also play a role since they have been involved against the Iranian regime over the past decade. I think that they have better intelligence on the ground. They are better accustomed to working with Iranian defectors and Israel's spy networks. At the end of the day, Iranians will not accept anybody imposed on them. Let's not forget, during the last round of protests on January 8 and 9, millions of people took to the street, even though they knew that they're going to be killed by the regime. So Iranians will not take that lightly, and they will play a role. I think that the way that things are going to play out in the next few weeks, we are going to see more strikes against top leaders, top military and political leaders. Right. And that will pave the way for Iranians to take back to the street and reclaim their country. So I believe Iranians will have a say on this. And in the end, President Trump and Israel will consider that.
You know, it's hard to believe that there's going to be a public funeral for Khamenei, given the security concerns that Israel and the U.S. could strike. So from what you're hearing on the ground from local Iranians, amidst this internet blackout, what is life actually like in Iran right now? And what type of control does the Islamic Republic actually have?
As you mentioned, there will not be a public funeral for Khamenei. The only thing that we heard from the regime was that he will be buried in his hometown in Mashhad, in northeast of Iran. But in terms of what Iranian people are seeing, but I have to be honest, they have also concern as well. You have seen videos of Iranians, being happy, celebrating the attack. For example, this morning, as the attack was happening, a couple was like, "Hey, Khamenei, this is the result of what you have done to Iranian people and killing our youth." But Iranians are mainly also concerned about the involvement of separatist groups on on around Western Iranian border. These groups, I mean, supporting these groups by U.S. and Israel, I think would be a huge mistake. I believe these groups do not even represent the majority of Iranian Kurds, and their strength has also been deeply exaggerated. And even if you combine all of these groups together, I think their number probably do not exceed a few thousand fighters, and many of them are already too old to fight effectively.
Right.
Iranians, the future must be determined through a democratic process, and Iran belongs to all Iranians, and no group can simply declare an autonomous region on its own. I also heard some of your guests in the
Yeah.
past 2 days said that accusation of separatism are just regime propaganda. That's simply not true. The leaders of these groups themselves have openly stated that they see autonomy as a first step toward independence. And if you look at the polling, for example, a few years ago, a poll showed that the combined support of all these so-called ethnic groups is not more than 5%. So Israel has to understand that any kind of support for them would provoke Iranian people. Territorial integrity of Iran is a sacred thing, the same way that Zionism is sacred for
Right.
the Jewish people. So it's a very sensitive issue, and I hope that the rumors are not true.
We're actually going to be turning to another guest on the issue of arming Kurdish militias and American support of launching an attack on the IRGC. It's very interesting what you just said about Iranians on the ground being worried about separatism. But I guess the question I have is there any other alternative method on the ground, any alternative group on the ground that has the capacity and ability to actually take on IRGC fighters, given the fact that Kurdish militias, from the numbers that we've heard from guests that we've had on, number in the thousands?
Well, there are not more than 3,000 groups. I know these.
We just heard the number 10,000, but of course, you know, either way, the question is there somebody else?
But how they're going to fight, 300,000 Iranian army members? That's not possible. And by the way, let's say they take over some parts of Kurdistan region of Iran. How that is going to topple the regime in Tehran? That's just not going to work. If you want to topple the regime, you have to topple the regime in Tehran and larger cities. And let's not forget that these groups are not necessarily popular even among Iranian Kurds. In the biggest Kurdish city of Iran, Kermanshah, people were chanting in favor of Crown Prince of Iran. When when a couple are getting married, one of the questions that people ask their family members, they say, "Are you a member of any of these parties?" I hope not. So we have to consider that fact. Unfortunately, many people outside Iran view Iran through a ethnic lens, but Iran is different from Iraq and other parts of the country. Iranian Kurds, the majority of them, I mean, you have to look at the polls. The majority of them view themselves as Iranian first. I'm an ethnic Mazandarani. We are 5% of Iran. We also have always considered ourselves as Iranian. And in terms of how the regime will be toppled, once you weaken the regime in Tehran, Israel is targeting, Basiji bases, and once they are weakened, that will pave the way for Iranians to take back to the street. Spreading, guns among Iranians is not a hard job, but how a couple thousand fighters from Kurdistan region can topple the regime in Tehran, that's a question that they have to answer. They say, we weaken the regime there around the border, but what about Tehran? What about other bigger cities? What you're going to do with a population that do not support these groups? Some of their former coalition, it's funny that one of the members of this coalition are blacklisted in the United States as terrorist groups, and many of Iranian cities, the major Iranian cities where Kurds live, also Iranian Azeri live. They will not welcome such a move. It will also provoke Turkey and Azerbaijan. So these are very sensitive issues. I mean, to tell Iranians that Israel would support such a move, it would be like for Israelis and others saying that we need to have autonomous region for the Druze community or Arab community in Israel. That would not be an acceptable outcome for Israelis. That's the same for Iranians. One cannot claim to be standing with Iranian people if you want to see the future of Iran fractured, chaos, and turning into an unstable civil war for the Iranian people. Iranians want a secular, democratic future decided by Iranians only through an election.
All right, Navid, I have to tell you, very interesting to have you